Hello friends, tonight we're going to do something a little bit different. We haven't done this in a while. We're going to just talk general firearms philosophy. I felt like it was time. So I'm not saying, by the way, that my opinion is definitive or that you should necessarily do what I'm discussing here. It's just an opinion that I'm offering. Maybe you haven't thought about this in a while. Maybe you've never heard this opinion before. I'm just throwing it out there. Just saying. So we've all gone to the range, and you look over into an adjacent bay, and you see, a guy wearing one of those flat-brimmed hats, and he's got just a vast array of guns, a ton of guns. And you look closely, after going, oh, that's cool, he's got a lot of guns. You look closely and you realize that he has one of every shitty piece of shit to have ever been shitted, and he brought them with him today, all of them. And then you watch him shoot 1 or 2 magazines through each one because he doesn't have money for ammo because he spent all his money on shitty guns. His high point carbine has a laser, so he shoots it from the hip. All 3 of his PSA AR-15s are topped with red dots, purchased for $24.99 on Amazon. And they all look like aimpoint T2s born with a degenerative bone disease. He has a Taurus Spectrum. He has a how do you say that? Sky Saucy. Sucky. I don't know how we say that. Ski. I'm going with ski. He has a Turkish shotgun he purchased from Classic Firearms that has no brand name and is called something like the Witness Protection Program. And he almost certainly has a Heritage Rough Rider. Hell, he probably has 2. He probably has the one with the 16-inch barrel. These guns may get to the range twice a year if they're lucky, and most of them have under 150 rounds through them. Range time would, after all, get in the way of buying more shitty guns. This is just a sampling of the bullshit buffet held within that boom boom booth. Rumor has it that he is now engaged to Jennifer, who is, unbeknownst to him, plotting to run off with his landlord's mother's boyfriend, who she met at the Applebee's bar. And as you look closely at this assortment of possum food, you do the rough math, and you realize that with that amount of money, he could have bought a fucking BCM or an Arrow with a good optic, a very nice plastic pistol like our Glock here, or a Beretta or a Walther, or even an HK. And perhaps, depending on how many PSA AR-15s he has, he could have even bought a plate carrier with that budget. There might have even been enough money left over to purchase a session with BDSM horse. You know someone who does this, buying all the guns, not the BDSM horse thing. Well, maybe you know somebody who does that too, but more likely the guns. Maybe you are this person, again, with the guns, I hope. At the very least, you can admit that you've seen this person at the range. So I ask you, would it not be better to have 1 or 2 nice things than a closet full of shitty things? I will present 3 points that good stuff purchased once is a better investment than crap purchased often. It will provide more joy and will help you to be healthier, happier, more effective you. Also, this is kind of off the cuff. I have rough bullet points, but there will probably be some fucking rambling and yammering and more than usual. So, I'm sorry, but this is just a rough outline. And for the record, again, I'm not saying you need to alter your purchasing habits. I'm just offering an alternative opinion that you might find rewarding. It might be worth just trying it for a little while, maybe. So, first of all, cheap stuff is cheap. Cheap stuff, it's not a good investment. It's right there in the name. It's cheap. So cheap stuff doesn't always provide inferior performance, but it can. Cheap optics are less durable, they don't hold zero, and they might fail when you really need an optic to work. So why take the risk? And by the way, I'm not talking about Holosun. They're on the cheaper end, but I still consider a Holosun a totally viable optic. We're talking about the really cheap stuff. Cheap rifles can run reliably, and I speak from experience there, but they can offer inferior performance on the clock, and they do tend to have shorter lifespans. Again, I say that from personal experience. For instance, cheap rifles tend to be heavier. You aren't getting a fucking super nice lightweight rail system on a $350 rifle. You aren't getting a pencil barrel, and you definitely aren't getting one that has received a proper modern stress relief treatment like our lovely Ballistic Advantage barrel here. You're getting a shitty trigger that feels like somebody filled the lower up with sand, and you're getting wider tolerances and sights that are difficult to zero. you've all seen that, where next thing you know, you've got the windage maxed out and the sights still aren't quite on. These small things add up to bad performance on the clock. You find that you kind of suck at the range. And then you go out and purchase a few more guns exactly like that. Why the fuck would you do that? That makes no sense. No thank you. And there's no way around it. Cheap gun parts, they don't last as long. I'm absolutely speaking from personal experience. Cheap barrels have a much shorter lifespan in some cases. Cheap bolt carriers are more likely to crack. In some cases, tolerances are off enough that some parts will wear prematurely. In the best case scenario, you have to buy a new gun or new parts. In the worst case scenario, the gun picks the absolute worst possible moment to break, the moment when you really needed a gun. And look, I hate to break it to you, the cheap stuff has no resale value. Have you ever seen what PSA or Delton or Bear Creek builds actually sell for? I don't mean what very, very optimistic people list them for on Arms List. I mean what they actually sell for. You get utterly fucking hosed on those guns. The same goes for other cheap stuff when we aren't in a pandemic. Right now, things like high points are selling for a bit more because, hey, pandemic. But you will never get close to what you invested back in cheap stuff. You'll be very, very lucky if you get even half on an AR build. It's just a bad investment. It's not a good way to spend your money. 2, we dream about great gear. Live the dream. Don't dream it, live it. Wow, it sounds like a sports drink commercial. I should write jingles for sports drinks. So we've established that if you're buying a ton of cheap crap, you probably have enough money to buy 1 or 2 nice pieces of equipment instead. We dream about that moment when we have enough spare cash to walk into the gun store and leave with a BCM, a Daniel, a Tavor, an Aero Precision, and maybe an HKP30 or a Glock or a Beretta or whatever. Just a great rifle and a great pistol to accompany it. But you're there already. You can live that dream. If you just stop buying bullshit and save for a while, if you can be patient, you can have the gun you want. I know this is easier said than done, and I understand that you're getting something out of that cheaper purchase. Every time you buy a new gun, you're getting that rush of endorphins, that new gun feeling, and somewhere along the way, that new gun feeling has become stronger than the desire to have those dream guns. So you need that rush, and as a result, you never get the Tavor, and you never live your gun dreams because you've decided that you would rather more often experience that feeling than save up to get the big thing. So don't give in to the Instagram idea that you should always have a new gun, that you have to be in a constant state of spending money to be happy. Learn to find happiness in your superior performance at the range and in gloating on Instagram when you show off your awesome new rifle. And don't believe that the cheap stuff is just as good. How often do you hear this? This is just as good. Sometimes that's true. Occasionally, something inexpensive is absolutely just as good as the more expensive thing. But most of the time, it isn't. I have some cheap optics from the olden days, and I have some very nice new ones. Guess what? I'm faster with the nicer ones. Yeah, it's true. They have better glass. In a lot of cases, they're just better in every conceivable way. Oftentimes, you're getting real performance for that extra money, and you'll have the personal satisfaction of knowing that you're more effective and have a gun that is the envy of others. Less is more. And now, an anecdote. I work in the music industry where this sort of thing is common. I know lots of folks with piles of very shitty guitars and amps. They hate the way they sound, so they're perpetually buying more cheap bullshit, always swapping pickups, getting a ton of new, cheap, lousy pedals, and they hope that this will solve the problem. Instead, most lousy sound problems are solved by plugging a good guitar in a good amp and playing well, and that last part is key. I've come to realize that buying 1 or 2 nice things is scary. Because then, if you don't sound good, the problem is you. There's no other variable left to solve. It's you. And it's like that with guns, isn't it? If you get a really nice rifle and a really nice optic and you still suck, guess what? You suck. And last of all, do you like shooting guns or do you like buying guns? We buy guns to shoot them, right? Shooting guns is fun. But do you exclusively collect terrible, shitty, cheap AR-15 parts kits? made of mystery parts from God knows where for $350. No, you can't use collecting as an excuse in this case. I mean, I guess that could just be your thing, but God, I hope it isn't. The fact is, this is indicative of a larger societal problem. We would rather talk about or think about something than do it. Getting your stuff together, getting in the car, driving to perform a physical activity in the hot sun, that's all hard. That's much harder than browsing the internet for some more crap to buy. And so you never quite make it to the range. We've come to value stuff over experiences. Having a bunch of stuff at home is more fulfilling than many awesome range experiences alone or with friends. And like with guitars, you never stop buying junk to get that one nice rifle, because then the poor performance will be your fault. You're the reason the gun is slow. You malfunctioned at that point, not the gun. If you're not taking the cheap stuff to the range, you also are not aware of just how deficient it can be. You aren't aware of the various types of hilarious malfunctions that a Taurus can have. If you were making it to the range, you would know that you'd be much better off with just one nice gun. So I think we as a community need to get our priorities in order. We buy guns to shoot them because shooting is fun. And we shoot guns to get better at shooting guns. Shooting is the goal. The guns are the tools that we use to get closer to that goal. And we should all want good tools. Now, I'm not, for the record, if you have a ton of disposable income and buying piles of stuff doesn't get in the way of your training or going to the range, then please carry on. Continue to buy a ton of stuff. That's great. That's awesome for the firearms economy. But most of us don't have that kind of money. And so we have to choose new guns or range time. And I think it's more important generally to choose the experiences over the stuff. So let's focus on self-betterment and fun experiences. A nice rifle and pistol will hold their values well. They'll last a very long time, and you can rub it into your friends' faces that you have a Daniel Defense rifle. In the past few years, as the channel has grown, I've felt pressure to purchase the newest guns to review. And I've given into that on many occasions. I'm incredibly flattered that anyone would want my opinion in the first place. That's crazy to me, and I'm honored. But I've come to find that I really hate buying new guns. I prefer experiences. I'd rather shoot what I have until the wheels fall off, and the content on the channel will reflect this. I don't want to be part of the problem. I also find that most of the time, I would just rather be shooting a few of my favorite guns. When I'm testing stuff for the channel, yeah, I have an awesome time, don't get me wrong, but I often wish that one of my two favorite arrows was there, or my P30 or Beretta, or something that I've come to really enjoy in the last year or so, this 10mm Glock. I'd much rather just be shooting this combination most of the time. So if I just had my two favorite arrows and three of my favorite pistols, I'd be happy for the rest of my life. And really, that could probably be pared down to one rifle and one pistol, and I'd be totally okay with that. So let's spend as many range days together as possible. Let's treasure our nice tools and value life over stuff. Stuff isn't life, it's stuff. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you all have a wonderful evening. Thank you for listening to my rant, and I'll talk to you soon. Good night.